shark. So I was thinking about, kids crusades and youth camps, and your pastor didn't write Baby Shark. Hope that didn't ruin your childhood. But and then I was thinking before church, I sat up outside in the little foyer area, and the first time I ever came to Shelby St, we were young missionaries. We were seeking where to go. Kind of felt like Abraham. We didn't know really where we were headed. I had two little girls. Just turned 2 and 4 when we moved into Mexico, and somehow I got recommended to come to this church, Shelby St Pentecostal Church, for Pastor Carlos Burdine. So I said, Carlos Burdine, Carlos. And I came in looking for a Carlos, and I couldn't find a Carlos, and I found Carlos Burdine. And so, hey, brother, we introduced ourselves, and, I said, I was looking for a Spanish guy. He said, no, and he's not a Spanish man. And then after church, y'all, this is so embarrassing. After church, we had church, good service and everything. I was standing in the back, and I was talking to a brother, and I said, now, I'm Brother David Trawick. And he said, I forgot the first name now, but I said, well, now, do you go to church here all the time? He said, I'm Brother Grace. I'm the pastor. I was so embarrassed because I didn't know y'all were dual pastoring at the time. And there, he said, he was very gracious. Y'all know, he was a very gracious man. And he didn't try to embarrass me at all, but I was embarrassed. I'm so sorry, brother. So I have a few humorous memories. I came a little nervous tonight. What am I going to do tonight? But it is good to be with y'all. And the kids sang a song. Y'all, that's my favorite part of the service. Y'all may not like that, but that's my favorite part because I was raised in a church that put premium on children. They put a premium on the children. And when I was pastoring in Mexico, y'all can't really see that clock, can you? That thing's so small, you can't really see it, right? So when I was pastoring in Mexico, we lived in Mexico, a place called San Luis Potosi for 7 years. Started at this little storefront church right on a bus route where two bus routes came together, and so folks were all the time stopping by, and sometimes they'd wander in and all, but after church one night, we went to eat somewhere, and I saw another pastor. And, how pastors do. Hey, how you doing, brother? How'd it go today? Did y'all have good service? Yeah, we had a good service. Yeah, we did too. He said, how many did you have? And I don't know. I think I told him we had about 35. And he said, and he knew me. And he said, yeah, but how many of those 35 were adults? And I said, well, we had about 30 kids. He said, then you had 5. And I said, wait a minute now, brother. I said, I had 35. He said, yeah, but those 30 can't do anything. He said, those 30, they can't really contribute. He said, those 30, they can't give in the offering. And those 30, so you had 5. I said, no, sir. I said, I had 30 that have their life ahead of them, that can spend their entire life in the house of God, that can avoid the mistakes those 5 have made. That if we get a hold of them while they're little, they can put their hand in the hand of God, and they can walk with the Lord all their life. I said, I had 5 that are halfway through with life. Y'all realize, I hope this doesn't hurt any young folks' feelings, but if you're 35, according to the Bible, you're middle-aged. The Bible gives us 70 years, maybe another 10 by strength or something, but so I told him, I said, I got these in front of me, and I really enjoyed the booster band, whatever y'all call your young folks, and the pity march. I used to pastor a church in the Assemblies of God, and they said ways to know that your church is outdated, and penny march was on there, and I thought, well, we're going to do penny march anyway because I want to involve my children in the work of the Lord. So kids, y'all's little gathering of coins and things, that helps me be a missionary on a foreign country, and that money goes to help me to be able to eat, and I like to eat. And it helps me pay my bills on time, and I love to pay my bills on time. It helps me put fuel in my truck. And, it's just a little diesel pickup they have down there, but I like to drive it. And you kids help me out today. And then y'all sang a song about what I'm doing. I'm building a building. And you'll see some of that on the slides or the picture, the video we show in a minute. But we're building a building and a structure. When I was a kid, they taught me that the church is a bride, a body, and a building. We're the bride of Christ. We're a body of believers, and we're meeting in a building. Well, I'm building a building, and you kids sang about it. So I need y'all to holler, "Hey, brother, won't you help me?" "Hey, sister, won't you help me?" And so I'm really excited. And this may not be conventional, but I really am excited about being here at Shelby Street. And for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm just going to give a little introduction and kind of tell about our past. But I'm David Trawick, and my family and I, we've been missionaries since 1998. And moved to a place called San Luis Potosí, Mexico. We didn't speak Spanish. Anybody take high school Spanish? I took high school Spanish. My teacher felt it very, very important to learn how to say, "Donde está la biblioteca?" Where's the library? Do y'all know I've been a missionary since 1998, and I have never asked where the library is? But she felt like that was real important, so we moved to San Luis Potosí. We learned Spanish, kind of learned it on the fly. There was a school for 3 months, then it shut down, and I learned on the street, and so maybe some of the things I say might not be quite grammatically correct, but we, in 2005, I think it was, we moved to Savannah, Georgia, and we started a Spanish congregation with Brother Ryan Ralston under the umbrella of his church, and we had people come and go, and this church just never really took off. So then we started doing missionary evangelism and going out into different parts of the world. Our whole family's bilingual, so we could sing, we could preach, we could work the altars, we could say pobrecita. And that poor little thing, she bumped her head on the pew, so we could say pobrecita in Spanish. And so we were traveling around, and I got invited to preach a tent camp meeting in a place called Roatan Island, Honduras. Now, the difference in Roatan Island, Honduras, is it was originally settled by Caribbean blacks, and they speak English. Brother John were to come to Brother Ali's church. That's the pastor on the South Shore. His name is Ali. His dad liked boxing, so he named him after Muhammad Ali. I'm kind of glad he didn't name him Brother Muhammad. That sounds a little strange, but Brother Ali's a great man of God. And so if Brother John were to come, their services run bilingual, so they would say, "It's good to be in the house of God. Está bueno estar en la casa de Dios." We're going to take the prayer request this time. Vamos a recibir las peticiones de este momento. Who got one prayer request this side? ¿Quién tiene una petición de este lado? And so, if you know Spanish, you listen to Spanish. If you're Caribbean, you listen to the English. And somebody may holler out, "Hey, brother, you got to pray for my father. My mother be saying he's sick." And if you didn't catch that, you wait for the Spanish translation. And if you don't know Spanish and you didn't catch that Caribbean English, you say, "Lord, help that need." You know what it was. And that's the way Brother Ali's church is. And so we live on the North Shore, and if you wonder about the island, it's about 4.5 miles wide by about 40 miles long. People ask me, "Do you live by the beach?" It's 4.5 miles wide. At any point, you are 2.25 miles from a beach somewhere, whichever side of the mountain you want to go over. And so we live on this island, Roatan, and we moved. Brother Ali's church is on the South Shore. We moved to the North Shore. We started a church up underneath our house. Our house is built up on stilts. If you've been to the Caribbean or you've been to the Gulf Coast, you've seen those houses built up, and we started a church there. And there's approximately about 120,000 people. This was in a census, probably it was before COVID. They did a census. They estimated about 120,000. I would dare say there's quite a bit more. We have a neighborhood right by our church called La Colonia, which is actually 5 different neighborhoods that have grown together, built houses up. If you've ever seen the Caribbean, they just build one right on top of the other. And they say there's about 40,000 people right there in just that one little area right by our church. And so it is bilingual. The cruise industry, the cruise ships come there. Tourism is the number one domestic product that they have. And so if you've ever gone on a cruise to Honduras, and some have, then you came to Roatan because it's the only port for cruise ships. And so that all is how Roatan Island is. It does belong to Honduras. Therefore, the official language is Spanish. And my daughters, when they live there with us, my youngest daughter is a legal secretary in Alabama now, and but when she lived there, she worked in an ACE Christian school. Is your school ACE? So y'all are familiar with ACE, right? And she worked in this school. It was Caribbean school, so the majority of the children spoke English. She had a little boy in the school. His name was Leander. And if you look up hyperactivity in a dictionary, Leander has an 8x10 glossy. I mean, and so she's teaching Leander, and he's got the office. He's in his office. And I can't remember what grade. It seems like he was in second or first grade. And he was learning words that end in EED. And so she told him, she said, sit down, Leander, and write the word read. He said, I can do it, Miss Lydia. And she said, I know you can. He wrote REED. And she said, now write the word seed. He said, I'm going to write this one standing up. She said, no, you're going to sit back down. And she sat him down. He wrote SEED. And she said, now write the word greed. He said, can I do it over here? And she said, no, come back to your office and do it right here. And he wrote greed. And then she said, now do the word weed. Write the word weed. He said, I can't do it. She said, yes, you've done all these right. Write the word weed. He said, I can't do it, Miss Lydia. I'm not going to write weed. She said, why not? He said, Miss Lydia, do you know what weed is? Second grade, I believe. And she said, yes, Leander, I know what weed is. Now write the word weed. He said, I'm not going to do it. He said, I'm not going to write weed. And she said, yes. She said, and by then he'd stepped over, he'd acted. And he said, Miss Lydia, I'm not going to write weed. She said, Leander, get over here and do weed. And when she told him to do weed, the whole class said, oh. He said, don't worry, Miss Lydia, she's a Christian girl. She doesn't understand what weed really is. So that's kind of, they do have ACE schools, and we do face a little bit of different maybe problems than you do. But my oldest daughter, Tabitha, and her husband, Taylor, and the most beautiful grandbaby this side of the Caribbean, her name is Tiana Kay. Her middle name is my wife's middle name, and she was named after her nanny. But they live in Roatan. They help me with the work, and Tabitha she is a pharmacy technician, and she was volunteering at a low-income health clinic, and she was pulling files, and she heard them call the name of a young lady. And she looked at her file, and this young lady's coming down the hallway of the clinic. And Tab thought, well, this is kind of neat. We're the same age. We're born on the same day, same year. And this has been a few years back. And Tabitha looked, and this mother, as she's coming down the hallway, is adamantly declaring, I will not keep this baby. I do not want this baby. I'm not keeping this baby. And Tabitha looked, and she was 23 years old, and she was expecting her 8th child. Promiscuity and immorality runs rampant in Latin America, expressly on Roatan Island. Many of the mothers are very apathetic. The government of Honduras declares that the average age of a first-time mother is 15 years old. And so my girls were very active in the ministry and endeavoring to help. And so I'm going to give you a few highlights of the ministry. We're going to show a presentation in just a moment. But we started our ministry going into the public schools and the government school system. We have a little portable puppet stage that we can pop up and we can pop down. And even with it up, you can pick it up. It's very light and go into a different classroom. And we go into the government schools. They run their school system from February to November. That's a school year for them. So if you're about to start school, y'all come to Honduras, you'll be halfway through with school. So, it's just a little trick I'll tell you young folks. But anyway, we'd go into the public schools with our puppets, and we would teach, they wanted us to teach what they called life values. And that's things like honesty and kindness and goodness, the character traits that are necessary to be a good person. And so I developed a little program that we could go in and have a little about 15-minute whole entire session. I developed this program on obedience and went to one of the first schools, and I was teaching on obedience. I asked the kids, how many of you know we're supposed to be obedient? Every one of them knew they were supposed to be obedient. I said, to whom are we supposed to be obedient? And someone said, mama, and someone said grandmama, and someone, they're very few. The dads are just not very present in the lives of the children in Honduras, especially in Roatan. And somebody, you always got that one kid that said teacher and smiled real big at teacher. You always got one like that, So I was teaching on obedience, and the kids were learning, and that teacher, she was all up into this. Now, here's this gringo who's come, and he's teaching. Y'all know what gringos are, right? That's y'all. It's Americans. And so this gringo's come, and he's teaching on obedience. And I got right down to the very end of it, and I said, now, obedience is important. The Bible says we should be obedient, and our teachers say we should be obedient. I said, but there's one problem. It's impossible. And when I told those kids it was impossible, the teacher's faces just fell like, what in the world? This guy has come in, told the kids they're supposed to be obedient, and now he tells them they can't. And I told him, the only way we can be obedient is if we allow Jesus Christ to cleanse our life of sin. Remove sin from our life and allow Him to live in and through us, and then we can be obedient to the Word of God and to others. And I said, how many of you kids would like to pray a prayer that will teach you how to be obedient? And several raised their hand. I looked back, and the teacher in the back corner raised her hand. And when we prayed, I peeked and I looked, and the kids were praying, and the teacher had tears rolling off her cheeks as she prayed the sinner's prayer so that she too could be obedient. So I want y'all to pray for the public school ministry that God would help us. Now, we've not been able to go because of COVID. They did say that maybe by the end of this school year we can get in, or maybe next year we can get back into the government schools, and it's a win-win situation. The teacher doesn't have to teach. The kids don't have to listen to her teach. They get to listen to somebody else be funny and have a lot of fun. And so it's just a great opportunity to share the gospel. So pray for us. We'd get to go in. Now, we also started a ministry underneath our house. We call it La Hora de los Niños, or Kids Hour Church for Children, and we started that on Kids Day. Yeah, how many of you kids growing up always wondered, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Grandparents' Day, you always wondered, when is Kids Day? I'd ask my mama, when is Kids Day? She said, every day is Kids Day. But in Honduras, they actually have a Kids Day. In Latin America, they have a day set aside for kids, and it's during the school year, and they have a party, and September 10th. It's coming right up. That's a Sunday, so you'd have to do it Friday. Y'all in school Friday before September 10th? I mean, I'm not saying you have to do it, but I would say if I were a young person, it's just a day. You don't have to do any paces, and I'm just throwing that out there. But, anyway, we started our church on Kids Day and had a piñata and everything. And so then we started having every Sunday, we would have Kids Hour, and the kids of the community just walk over there and walk to the house. It was built up, we underneath the house, and we started having Kids Hour, and we did that for a few months. And this little group of kids came up to me, and they're growing, and things are going good, and they're learning the Word of God and all that. And we ended up, before COVID, hitting about 45 children that were coming. We had some gringo families that were bringing their kids to our services as well. And now this past Sunday, we had 19 boys, and we had 3 girls. So y'all need to pray for the girls. They really need some help. But maybe Sister Nana could come and you could help us out with the girls, get them excited. But anyway, we have Kids Hour on Sunday. And one day the kids came to me and they called me Pastor David, which means Pastor David. So they said, Pastor David, we want to have big people church. I said, big people church. They said, yeah, like all the other churches, they have big people church. And we feed the kids every Sunday. And so I thought maybe they were wanting to come back for supper. And I said, look, if we have big people church, we're not going to have food. And they said, oh, okay. I said, and if we have big people church, we're not going to do puppets. And they said, oh. I said, yeah, no puppets in big people church. They said, well, that's okay. And I said, and we're not going to sing Padre Abraham tenía hijos. Yeah, y'all remember that one? And este lucecita, this little light of mine, we sing those. I said, we're not going to sing, we're going to sing worship songs. They said, oh, we like those. I said, we're going to sing hymns. They said, we like those. I thought this would get them, Brother John. I said, well, if we have big people church, I'm going to preach to you. And one of the boys said, that's just what I need. And I thought, you are absolutely right. So I said, we got one more problem. They said, what's that? I said, we don't have any big people. I had about 25 that time, 30 little people, and no big people. They said, God will send us big people. And you know, this past Sunday night, we had 6 big people. And we had a couple that are usually there that weren't there. And so, well, now that we're working on a building, we're having big people start coming. And so that's Kids Hour in our church. We started, it's called Lighthouse of Hope. And I can't think of a better name for a church on an island, you know, than a Lighthouse of Hope, because where our church is located, from me to the back, well, actually from me to this front window is a cantina. This is a bar. And they drink and they carouse and they make racket, and sometimes their music is louder than what's going on inside the church, and it's just that close. And then behind the cantina, there's a crack house where they sell crack cocaine, and all hours of the night you can get up and you can see them walking and going back into that crack house. And then I thought, you know, well, Lord, right here, what can we do except but shine the light? Because right coming into our community on the road, there's a house of prostitution and another crack house. So right in the middle of all that, we're building a church called Lighthouse of Hope, because the reason these folks are getting involved in this lifestyle in which they're getting involved is because they have no hope. And so we want to build a church called Lighthouse of Hope. And when my wife passed away in 21, August 11th, 21, someone did an in lieu of flowers. And so there was this memorial fund, and I took that money and I laid the foundation of the church that you're going to see a few pictures of. I laid the foundation based on LaDonna's legacy and all that she'd ever done for the Lord. So now everything we build on that property is being built on her legacy. And so we have Lighthouse of Hope Church, and the Lord's really blessing and helping there. My daughter Tabitha and Lydia, when she still lived there, they started a girls club, age 7 and above, and their whole premise, their whole purpose in starting this girls club is to show girls that they individually have value. When society says that sex is your value, that promiscuity is accepted, that it's a cycle that's gone on for generation after generation, someone's got to break that cycle. And so Tabitha is now teaching every Friday night, little girls age 7 and up. And I'm telling y'all, sometimes it's very plain teaching that has to be done, because we have a little girl that just last week, I believe, or the week before, that used to come to Kids Hour and was faithful, but her mama kept letting her run around with young men, and just a couple weeks ago, at 12 years old, she delivered her first child. And we want to be able to stem and break that cycle. So y'all pray. It's a very heavy and difficult ministry, and you can imagine how Tabitha feels after she's invested in the life of this little girl from little on up to now, and now she's a little mama. She's a child raising a child. And so pray for the girls club. When my son-in-law moved there, he and Tabitha married, he moved there. The boys came to me and they said, Pastor David, the girls have a club. And I said, yes, they do. And they looked at me like, well? And they said, can you hear us, Brother David? Yeah, the girls have a club. I said, right, Tabitha teaches a girls club. They said, and I wasn't getting it. They said, Brother Taylor's here, and he could start a club. And I said, now, y'all, he's just learning Spanish. He just moved here. It's him, it's not me. Yeah, the boys can have a club. And so we started a boys club. And Taylor, he's a young man. I tell folks, we on video? I tell folks that Taylor is one of them kind of young men that knows half of a lot of things. You know, you ever met folks like that? No, they know half. But here's the difference. Taylor's not afraid of the other half. A lot of folks, when they get to the half they don't know, they just pack it up and they say, I can't do it. No, Taylor, buddy, he'll rip that thing apart and rebuild it. You might have 3 or 4 extra pieces, but it's running. And my wife, she believed Taylor could do anything. I'd ask him, now, Taylor, look here, do you think you could do this? If there was a moment's hesitation, I'd say, all right, we'll hire somebody. LaDonna just walked in, Taylor, I want this, and you need to build that. And I mean, he'd go after it. And Taylor, he's never met his biological father. He doesn't know who his bio dad is. He was raised by a man, he called dad all his life. And his mom and dad started having marital troubles. They're going to get a divorce. The judge says, you got to pick which one you're going to live with. He said, I don't want to pick one. I want to live with both of them. And at 16, his mom said, I don't know why you want to live with him. He's not even your dad. You're adopted. That's how he found out. But when Taylor goes into our community to little boys who don't know who their bio dad is, or whose bio dad is a mean man, or who they're being raised by a grandmother, Taylor can just click with them. And those boys think he can fix anything. They bring him their broken bicycles. They bring him all, and Taylor so y'all pray for the boys club. Taylor's purpose, he says, is he wants to show those boys that, number one, a real man can love Jesus. Number two, a real man will take care of his family. And number three, a real man will come to church and be faithful and work for God. And so he's trying to teach the boys that in the boys club. And then on the pictures, you're going to see that we minister to inmates. On Roatan Island, there is not a prison. There's a jail. So if you're arrested and convicted, you go to the jail. You're usually there about a month before you get... can't think of the word in English, transferred over to the mainland where there is a prison. And so we get one shot. They allow us to go to the jails once a month, and we get one shot at these men that need God. And so I want y'all to pray that God would open that door. There's a bit of a difficulty right now. They've changed the transferred day to Sunday. That's the day we were going, so we're going to try to get it on a different day, because not only do we preach to the inmates, but we get to preach to the police officers, because they can't leave. They got to guard the chicken house. And so we're right there with the police, and we're right there with the inmates, and we can preach the gospel to all of them. And of course we carry food. We are Pentecostal, and we take them food, and they're happy about that. And so y'all pray for the inmate service. So brother, I'm just about ready for that presentation whenever you are, but we're praying that God would help us, send us workers, and send us souls. And here we go. There should be audio. I'd sing with it, but I'd clear the house out pretty quick. The song is I Speak Jesus, and we want to show Jesus Christ. They told me y'all had the best sound man in the country.
Jesus from the mountains, Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy, Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. I just want to speak the name of Jesus over every heart and every mind, 'cause I know there is peace within his presence. I speak Jesus.
That kind of gives you an overview, a picture, an idea of the ministries in which we're involved. I forgot to mention Kids Kitchen of Hope. We do we do from Sunday to Friday. We feed children a hot, nutritious meal. The mothers, when you have a child at 12, 14, 15, by the time they're 10, you're you're just 25, 24, 27. They're very apathetic about their children. So I was watching the kids in the mornings go to what we call a pulperia. It's a little shop, and they come back and they're carrying a bag of chips, and that's their breakfast. And then at lunchtime, they've pilfered a few lempiras, the money, and they're coming back, and they got a candy bar and a Coke, and that's their lunch. I told LaDonna, I said, we have got to start feeding our kids. And so we started feeding every day a hot meal. And we have different folks come in. We've had drunks come in. We have some senior citizens that before COVID, they would come. They passed away. But we just opened it up to anybody and everybody that wants to come and eat. And we had a drunk guy come in, and one of the kids did something to another kid. He started getting belligerent, and the cook come out the kitchen, boy. She had a spatula in her hand, and she chased him right up out that kid's kitchen. She ran him out. And she's Caribbean black lady. She said, Brother David, they're not going to mess with my children. I said, well, sister, her name's Edith. It's Iris. I said, Sister Edith, you can't really hit anybody. And she said, I didn't hit him, but I wasn't gonna. And so y'all pray for Kids Kitchen. The whole premise, this is my whole purpose. I want to bring children onto our church property so they know this is a place I'm safe. So they know this is a place I'm cared for. This is a place I'm loved. And if down the road they get in a bad spot, I want them to be able to have a memory of a place that I used to go to where people were kind to me, where people loved me. So that's Kids Kitchen. And then if you follow us on social media, I've got a little boy I'm raising. His name is Tito, and he just Thursday turned 13. And I'm not real well with that, but I got him. He started coming to our house when he was 7. And I got him when he was 9. He was 9 years old. Little bitty. Tito actually means small. It's a diminutive in Spanish, and it means small. And at 9, he was wearing 5T clothing because he'd been malnourished so much of his life. And he started living with us. Well, his real name is Jehoshaphat James Castro Antunes. It sounds like an outlaw, doesn't he? And he is. He's an all-boy boy, and that's the only kind of boy we need to have. He's active. In one of those pictures, I don't know if you noticed, but he got hooked, treble hook from a lure right there in his elbow. Never cried a tear as they dug that thing out. But he's really intelligent. When I got him, he didn't. When he started living with me full time, LaDonna was still alive. He could not read in Spanish. And if you know anything about Spanish, it is a purely phonetic language. Every A is A, every O is O. And if you teach kindergarten, if you do the ABCs, ACE, there's 3 A sounds. The agenate, the antelope, that's what my nephew always said, the antelope, the antelope, and what's the other one? Armadillo. But in Spanish, it's just one. Think about the word phonetics. So anyway, I digress. Let's go back to Spanish. So Tito could not read Spanish. And during COVID, I hired a tutor, and he would ride the back roads on his scooter because we were locked down. You couldn't get out of your house. He'd ride the back roads on a scooter, and he'd teach Tito how to read. And finally, he learned how to read in Spanish. He was super hyper excited. I can read in Spanish. Now I'm going to take a break. I said, nope, now I got another tutor coming. She's going to teach you English. And so she'd ride the back roads, and he learned how to speak English. He's bilingual now. And we were by ourselves one day in the house. I cooked breakfast, and he was just eating super fast. I know boys do that. You know, I'm learning. I had 2 girls, but I'm learning. And he was eating real fast. I said, whoa, buddy, slow down. What's the deal? Why are you eating so fast? And he said, he calls me Pastor David, or Papi's. Papi's what he usually says. It means daddy. And he said, at the other house. And that's what he always talks about. His previous life, he always calls it at the other house. He said, at the other house, sometimes the pot would run dry, so you got to eat fast. I said, listen, buddy, at this house, the pot's not going to run dry. Take your time. And I said, and if it runs out, we'll make more if we need to. But he's got this, I really think it's a condition where if there's food, he's going to eat it, because he's lived so long without having. And so I put him in a private school that could help with his English. In his first year, he went 2 grades in 1 year. The next year, he went 2 grades in 1 year. And then this last year, he was just about ready to do it again and wanting to, because he's kind of bored. But the teacher felt like he didn't have enough technical knowledge. But, I mean, he's got a real quick wit. I told him, he heard someone call me David. So he says, hey, David. And I said, no, you can't do that, buddy. I said, you either got to call me Pastor David. You call me Hermano David, which is Brother David. I said, you can call me Papi. I said, or you can call me Your Highness. He said, I can't do that one. I said, and why not? He said, you're too short to be high. Okay. So he's real quick-witted. But y'all pray for him every night. His prayer request is for adoption. And his bio dad never would sign. He literally thump his chest, say, that's my boy. Now, never gave a plugged nickel or lempita for his education, for his eating, anything. But his bio dad has finally agreed to sign the papers. But his mom decided to come to America wet, and so she's in Tijuana, Mexico, and we're trying to get her to come back home so they can at the same time sign the papers for Tito to be adopted. So that's kind of where that stands. And then what time do y'all usually? I usually go to the pastor's children and ask them what time they get out, because they tell the truth. You know, they either tell the truth or they fudge it a little bit closer to getting out earlier. But if you ask the pastor, he's always like, brother, just obey God. Well, I don't want to bore y'all to death. And so I'm going to try to run through this real quick. But I got to tell you about the construction, because we were praying for this piece of property. When we moved to the North Shore, we started renting this house. And across the street, there was this piece of property. It was walled. It was flat. I told LaDonna, I said, I want that property. Now, she was I just called her a pessimist, but she said, I'm a realist. So if you're pessimistic, you can use the word realist, and that, you know, makes people. But anyway, she was negative, and I said, I want that piece of property. And she said, well, good luck, because the Serrano family owns it. And the Serrano family owns some hardware stores. So they're very rich, and they're very, very, very Catholic. And she said, good luck on getting it. And I said, well, we're going to pray for it. She said, you go ahead. You know, she didn't mind me and Tabitha. But see, Tabitha and I, we're the optimistic side of our family, and Lydia and LaDonna, they were the negative side of the family. And so I decided I'd inquire how much, and they told us they wanted $180,000 for this piece of property. It's 65 feet by 110 feet. And they wanted that much money. And I told them, I said, well, I don't have quite that much. And quite at that moment was an extremely relative term, which meant I had nothing. And I said, I will start raising funds for us. I came to the U.S. I started raising funds. I got about $24,000. It was time to come back to Honduras. I came back to Honduras, and COVID hit. So we kind of pushed that on the back burner, you know. And if you could think about an entire island that the majority of their living comes from tourism, from running cruise ships to selling cruise property or to selling a product, taking tours, and all these things. That's the income of almost everybody. And so when that happened, everybody lost their jobs. They shut the island down. No cruise ships could come, no planes could come, no planes could leave, no boats could leave, etc. We were on, someone said, you gonna come home? I said, I can't. I mean, we're here. They locked it down. And so I told LaDonna, I said, we're gonna have to start feeding the families of the children that come to church. And so we got these 2 big, we call them costales. They're like the burlap bags you use when you do a jumping burlap bag race. We'd fill those things things up with groceries, 10 pounds of rice, 10 pounds of sugar, 10 pounds of beans, etc. And we'd fill them up, lard. I even bought them coffee because I wanted everybody to be nice to each other. And so I bought everybody coffee, and we started giving to our church kids, families, these. And I'd try to make sure nobody saw, because word could get out. Well, word got out. One day I went downstairs. There were two ladies. They said, we're looking for somebody we've heard about. He's a gringo whose name is Pastor David. I said, well, check it out. I'm a gringo, and my name is Pastor David. And they said, well, we heard you will feed people. And I said, yes, ma'am, I will. It's two sisters. I said, hold on. So Tito and I went upstairs. We got 4 bags. We drug them downstairs. And they said, you know what, we got a sister, and she couldn't come because water's falling. And when water happens, you got to take advantage and fill all the barrels that you got and your tubs. And that's how they do with their water. And I said, okay, hold on. So Tito and I went up. We got 2 more bags. We brought them down. They said, you know what? There's this one little man that lives in this little shack behind us, and he's hungry too. I said, look, y'all can't even carry all these groceries. They had come from the other side of the mountain. They came from the South Shore, walked up the mountain, walked down the mountain to us. And I said, on Friday, I'll give out some groceries. And I said, I'll do 50. I'll do 50 bags. You tell little man to come, and we'll put him right at the front. And I get up early in the morning. I got up that morning, and LaDonna, she didn't get up so early, but she got up, and she said, Dave, you need to go look outside. I said, what's the matter? She said, you just need to go look outside. I had 50 bags, sets of groceries, and so I looked outside, and there were 150 people waiting outside. I had 50 bags. We started giving out the groceries, and we started with the elderly first, and then we gave to the unwed mothers, and then we gave to, families, and then it was getting low, and they started coming forward, and they started pressing on our little wooden gate, and they're hollering, what about me? I've got 5 kids, and we haven't eaten in 3 weeks. What about me? My husband hadn't had work for 3 weeks, and they're pressing. They broke the hinges on the gate. Tito, he thinks of himself as a gringo now. He said, we're all going to die. He said, they know we're gringos, and we got food. They're going to kill us all for our food. And I sent him upstairs, and I made everybody stop. That was the only time I ever was happy to say social distancing. Everybody back up, social distancing, 6 feet. And so I started taking down names. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during the whole year of pandemic, every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, we upped the amount to 65, and we gave out 65 bags of groceries on Monday, 65 on Wednesday, 65 on Friday. And there were always more people than I had ability to do. So we'd write their names down and their number. And then LaDonna, with that tender heart she had, she said, we got to start feeding people. She said, they're hungry. And so on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, she'd get up, she'd make this big old pot of rice, a big old pan of rice, and we try to put a little bit of shredded chicken or some beans in it. And the only requirement, you had to bring your own plate. And they'd bring their plate. And on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we were feeding hot meals. And people coming through, as long as the food was there, we fed them. When it ran out, we were out. And LaDonna, I don't know if you noticed, but she had this love for drunks. And both her grandparents had been Pentecostal preachers, and she'd never been around drunks. But God put this special heart for alcoholics, and we had several that live in our community. She'd wrap her arms around them, hug them, tell them that she loved them, come to church, and she said, we got food, and where's your plate? And they said, we don't have a plate. And this one, his name's Walter, and Walter told us he hated us with all 10 fingers of his Honduran hands. He hated us. And she said, but my husband loves you. He said, that's why I hate him. And but when it came time to eat, Walter was real docile, and he said, I don't have a plate. He came with a piece of styrofoam he dug out of a trash can. He said, here's my plate. And she said, David, we got to get my boys some plates. And so we bought plates. And all this is going on during pandemic, and I'm praying for that piece of property, asking God to give it to us. And they had lowered the price down during pandemic to $85,000. And Mr. Frank, who was running the system, he said, we'll sell it to the church for $65,000. I had $24,000. That's all. I couldn't come out. I stuck on the island. During my prayer time one morning, the Lord began to deal with me about planting seed in the lives of others. And I realized in our movement, the evangelists had nowhere to go. Churches were shut down. They had truck payments. They had trailer payments. They had children eating them out of house and home. And they didn't have anywhere to go. And so I called a few few folks, and I said, I need some evangelists that don't have side gig. They don't have a home church supporting them. I said, I need some folks. I said, God has impressed me to send an offering. And I argued with God about the money. I said, Lord, I don't have enough money. He said, doesn't matter how much, just that you're faithful. So I sent to 5 different evangelists, and I knelt down at my chair, and I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but I said, Lord, I'm planting seed. God dealt with me about planting seed. And I said, I'm planting seed in the lives of these good missionary or these good evangelist brothers, and the harvest I asked for, and I pointed, is that piece of property right across the street. A few weeks later, God started dealing with my heart about sending money to people I didn't know. And expressly, I was dealt with about Venezuelan refugees who had fled the country of Venezuela because of communism and gone to Colombia. Now, if you can imagine leaving Venezuela and going to Colombia, if you know anything about history, it's not much better. And I said, Lord, I don't know any Venezuelans that are in Colombia. I don't know how. And then I saw on Facebook. I saw on Facebook that Brother John Roberts was preaching to Venezuelan refugees in the country of Colombia. I called him up. We're good friends. I say, John, how you doing? Great. I said, man, you still going down there to preach to those Venezuelans? He said, yeah. I said, do you know those folks? He said, yeah. I said, do you trust any of them? He said, I got one just talked to just the other day. I said, I want to send you an offering. I sent him an offering. He gave it to the Venezuelan. The Venezuelan man went down, bought groceries, gave it out, sent me pictures. I turned around, knelt down at my chair. I said, Lord, I have planted seed in people I do not know. I'm asking for that piece of property. God dealt with me to go talk to Mr. Frank and offer $25,000, I'm sorry. And I thought, well, I'll call Brother John Burdine. Surely he'll scavenge up, $1,000, help me out. And no, I didn't really think that. I just said, Lord, I need another 1,000. And I argued with God again. I said, if I go down there and offer them 24, they're wanting 85, and they'll accept 65. I said, Lord, they're going to mock me. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to throw me out of the hardware store. And I did. I just finally surrendered and went down. And just as I was about to go, the Lord said, they're not going to accept it. Well, Lord, remember when you was kids and you used to say, well, let's say that, let's don't do it, but say that we did. I kind of did that with God. Well, let's just say I went down there, but not. And he just kept pressing me, go, go, go. Finally, I went down. I talked to Mr. Frank, and I said, the way you do it is like, hey, how your kids doing? My kids are fine. Y'all got COVID yet? No, we ain't got COVID. My daughter's about to get married. You got a daughter about to get, and you do all this kind of family stuff. And then he says, Pastor David, what would you like? And I said, you know that piece of property? I said, I want, and just wouldn't hardly come out. I said, I want to make an offer. And he said, oh, great. How much you want to offer? I said, $25,000. He jumped up, turned around, started messing with his copying machine. I could see his shoulders. He went like this. I said, see, Lord, I told you they'd laugh at me. He turned back around, wiping his face, and he said, Pastor David, he said, hey, Miss Deborah wants you to have that property. She loves what y'all do with those kids, and you made an improvement on that community, but I just don't think she'll take $25,000. He said, but I'll talk to her. 4 days later, he called me and said, this is what Miss Deborah said she'll do. She'll take $25,000 down and give you an entire year to pay $25,000 more. Now, if you're in Rio Linda, like Russ used to say, that's $50,000. From 180 to 50. And I said, I called a buddy of mine that's a Caribbean black guy there. He's a good Christian brother. And I said, James, the Serranos are offering to carry a note, which doesn't happen. They're offering to carry a note for $25,000 more. I paid $25,000 down, and they'll carry a note for $25,000. He said, brother, that one good deal? He said, you don't do that, I'm going to buy it myself. I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm buying it. And I went down and wrote a $25,000 check. My hand was shaking. I'd never written a check so big in my entire life. Y'all know what Wells Fargo did? Kicked it out. Said, that's fraud. You've never written a check for $25,000, and you have never written a check in Honduras for $25,000. I said, no, this one's real. I promise. They said, okay, we'll honor it next time. Write another check. And I put out on social media that I needed a year to pay $25,000. Really, I needed 26. But I put out that I needed $25,000 for a year. Y'all, my PayPal started going, ba-ding, 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 ba-ding. I don't know how you do PayPal, but when I get one, I slide it straight into the bank before they can change their mind. I mean, I don't want anything to happen to it. And I'm sliding in this $25 here. I'm sliding $50 there, and I'm hollering out to Sister Pessimist, and I'm saying, hey, we got $25 from Sister Green over there in whatchamacall. Hey, we got $50 from the First Church in Kentucky, and so on and so forth. She's like, well, that's a long way to go, but praise God. And then the money just started coming. I got an email from PayPal, and they said, you're receiving too many donations. We're going to freeze your account for 24 hours so we can catch up. PayPal had never sent that. They ain't sent it since either, but I mean, they never sent an email like that. And then I started sliding block money. You know, I just, whatever came in that day, right into the bank. And in 4 weeks and a few days, I had $26,000. It's time for a praise break right now. I'm telling you. I mean, won't he do it? And we bought that property, and then the 2021. You know, we came out with COVID. My wife passed in Montgomery, Alabama, and they did that memorial fund. We built that foundation, and now we have a bottom floor and a roof. And Brother Sumner and them sent over, I think it was 5 or 6 of their men, and they stuccoed the walls all the way around. It looks beautiful. We got strung up lights because we don't have electricity there yet, and we string up lights, and we have kids hour, we have Sunday night, we have Tuesday small group, so just adults only, then Wednesday service, then Friday, and we're having church in this building that God through pandemic provided for, because God said, I want a church. And like the little kids sang, we started working on a building, and now we're at a point where we need about 22,000, 25,000 more to pour the ceiling of the second floor. We're going 3 floors. It's going to, you know, when you only have 65 feet wide and you can only use 55 feet of it because you got to leave 5 on each side, the only thing you can do is just keep going up, and 3 floors is what we're allowed. So we're doing a 3-floor church building. I want y'all to help us pray. I am in the U.S. right now in the month of August because the very last week of September there's a crew from Neosho, Missouri that's coming, concrete workers, American brothers, and they're going to pour the ceiling. I don't have the money for it yet, but I believe that I've got a God that's big enough to provide for it and to do what he needs to do. Amen. And real quick, and I can't, I'll be honest, I can't see the clock, so I don't know what time it is, so y'all don't look at the clock, and we'll all be good. But I want to tell you about 3 individuals. The first one I want to tell you about, her name is Edith. I've mentioned her already. She was a crack dealer. Her husband was a crack dealer. They lived behind the church. Their little girl, Samantha, the man's not her husband. I apologize. He's her man. They're not married. And their little girl, Samantha, was coming to our girls' club. They told the little girls told Tabitha, they said, we want to do what American people do. She said, what's that? You know, at Christmas time where they go around and they're singing and they sing about Christmas and they go place to place. And she said, caroling. They said, yeah, whatever it's called. We want to go caroling. So we made costumes, little angel dresses, and I cut out cardboard angel wings. We put halos on little girls that did not deserve halos at all. And we're singing, learning Christmas songs. And all of a sudden this guy named Street, his nickname is Street. He came in. He whispers something to Samantha. She starts shucking her costume. I mean, angel wings going, and the little girls beside her, that same thing. And turns out her mom and dad were getting arrested by the National Police for dealing crack. Daddy goes to the jail for men that's right there in Cox and Hole. Mama gets sent to the jail that's on the east end of the island. It's 40 miles away, approximately 35 miles away. And when you go to jail in Honduras, if you want a pillow, your family brings you a pillow. If you want a Pop-Tart, your family brings you a Pop-Tart. The only thing they provide you, they have a spigot that drips into a barrel or a jug, and they give you water. That is it. And so we went up there to the ladies' side. We went to see Victor first, and he was just upset that he'd been caught. You know, he was just angry that someone turned him in. We went up to the ladies' jail, and in the jail cell that Edith was in, there were 2 other women, a mother and her daughter. And I asked them, did y'all ever envision when you were putting pigtails on your little girl and ponytails on your little girl, did you ever think you'd be in a jail cell with her? And they just started crying. I asked Edith, I said, what about Samantha? Who has Samantha? Or do you think you'll have to spend time in a jail cell with Samantha? She's bawling. She said, I've heard about the gospel, and I know you're a preacher, but she said, I don't understand. And I showed her the plan of salvation. Those 3 women prayed, but Edith got a hold of the rock, and she now is our cook. She's the lady with the spatula. Every single day she comes up there to the church. She's faithful to the house of God. If she misses church, it's because she's sick or water is coming in to her community, and they have to catch the water in the barrels. And I mean, she's She's faithful to the house of God. She believes in witnessing. She was talking to a lady named Chayo that lives right down the road, and she told her about the church. And one day Chayo was walking right in front. Edith walks out, hooks her in the arm, says, "Hey, this is the church I told you about." And she went, and she turned her, and she walked her right into the church. She said, "You sit here, we're going to start, and you listen to everything that preacher has to say." But my son-in-law says she is a bulldog for Jesus. I mean, she loves the Lord, and she likes to bring people to the house of God, and she's faithful. And her life was so dramatically changed that Victor got sent to prison, and right before COVID, due to too many people in the prison, he had good behavior. He'd gotten saved, and he got released and came back to the island. And so they decided they're going to get married. Whew, glory to God. I mean, they're going to follow the commands of the Lord, go get married. It's different. She had to go back to her hometown, which is on the island of Guanaja. She had to get a police report. She had to get an age test. She had to get her original birth certificate. She did all that. And she thought, I'm going to go by the house and see my family. She goes to the house. She knocks on the door. This guy comes up. She says, "Hey, how are you doing?" He said, "What do you want?" She said, "It's me." He said, "I know." I said, "What do you want?" She said, "But you don't, it's me." And she called him by name, and he opened a screen door, and she said, "I'm Edith." And he said, "You are Edith. You don't look like Edith. You don't look like the Edith that left the island. You look like a whole nother person." You know why? Because God had done a restoration work inside of her. Her life's been changed. I was at the, what do they call that thing they do in Brooks? Winter Roundup, Winter Fest, Winter something. I don't know if it was this year or last year. It was this year, January this year. And I went to that, and I was coming up here in Indiana, going to go preach for some of the brothers and raise funds for the second floor. We got that done. But anyway, I forgot my iPad over there at the church at the fellowship hall. So I was already across the river. I had to turn around, drive all the way back. Y'all know, I mean, I guess if y'all go to Kentucky, you know. So I crossed that bridge again. I get back down there to Brooks, and I found my iPad, and I talked to a few folks, and I was walking to my car, and this young lady hollers out my name, and she said, "Brother Trawick, come here. I want to talk to you if I can." I said, "Sure." And she said, "I want you to meet my brother." Well, I thought, you know, sis, I'm in the U.S. raising funds. I'm here in Indiana, and you live in Granite City, Illinois. I don't know how I'm. And she said, "But you've got to meet my brother." And said, it's very important to me. And I said, well, she said, "He's a chef." And I thought, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Everybody wants to meet a chef, right? And she said, my brother, you got to meet him. And I still thought, how's this going to work? She said, "My brother is a chef, and he took a job on an island in the Caribbean." You got it, didn't you? Roatan. Here's a young man from Granite City, Illinois. He's multiracial, raised in a just an inner city, and through happenstance, he takes a job on an island that's got an independent Pentecostal missionary living there that knows his sister. I went to his restaurant, and y'all, if two people could be more unalike, it's me and Victor. He's young. He's got dreads. He's got a grill. I'm from East Texas. I'm old. And we go to his restaurant, and we're walking in, and my toe snagged on the dock, and I said, "Hey, sorry about that." I said, "You know, I'm from Texas. I usually wear boots." I said, "But I got sandals, y'all. Forgive me. It's an island. It's very hot." I said, "I'm wearing sandals." He said, "Man, your drip's cool." I thought, "My what?" He said, "Your shoes is bussin'." They're doing what? He said, "Yeah, your shoes is bussin', man." He said, "Your drip, it's an island drip." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know what he was talking about. And then we were telling him, he started following us, and he said, "Man, y'all slaying them kids over there with that orphanage." I thought, "We ain't slaying nobody." He said, "No, man." He said, "You're slaying." He said, "You're killing it." I got that. It's, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, it's not an orphanage. It's just a kids feeding program." And we became friends. And I'd shoot him a message. I'd call him. He'd come by, and he'd say, "Hey, man, we got some lobster." I said, "I'm coming down." You know, I mean, the guy makes stuff that looks real pretty but tastes real good. And we were just good. And Easter rolls around. And I said, "Victor, I'd like you to come to church Easter." And I said, "It's a really important day." He said, I'll come. And I thought, well, y'all ever, you ever invited somebody? He said, I'll come so fast. You're thinking, well, we'll see. Boy, church is about to get started, and this scooter comes pulling into the churchyard, and big old Victor, tall, gets off. He said, hey, preach, I'm here. I said, come on in, man. And it just by chance, if you believe such thing, happened that I had an American that was coming to preach. So he's going to preach in English, and I'm going to translate to Spanish. Whereas if it had been normal service, I'd have preached in Spanish. Victor wouldn't have got a thing out of it. But he heard the gospel message in his own language, and the brother gave an altar call. And guess who was the first one to stand up? It's that inner city boy from Granite City, Illinois, that just by chance happened to be on the same island where there's a missionary that loves people, and told him about the gospel. Church, I'm telling you that no matter where we are, I want to speak Jesus. No, Brother John, I said, hey, is there a Walmart around here? He said, there's one right up here. He said, now you might not hear any English. And I went to that Walmart, and y'all, there were probably, I don't know how many nationalities. I heard English. I heard Spanish. I just came from a place called the Gambia. It's on the western coast of Africa. I just came from the Gambia, and I'm sure that I heard some languages from those places. And I'm telling you that no matter where we are, there are people God puts in our life for us to reach. And then I need to have someone come to the piano, because I want to tell you about one more thing that's happened to us. We started this church. We started with children. And one night in the youth service, this big tall man came in, and we were feeding the kids that night. They call it baleadas. It's just a great big old taco. And it's got refried beans and scrambled eggs and cheese on it, and it's about so big, and we're feeding those kids, and this big man comes in, and he starts demanding me that I feed his 9 children. Well, I recognized pretty quick he was drunk, and he got all up my face, which meant he had to lean down, and he's screaming in my face about feeding his 9 children, and I said, look, bring your 9 children here. I didn't know the guy. I come to find out all 9 of his children except one were above age 15. And he's wanting me to feed his 9 children, and he got real physical and acting, and the young folks, the boys, they all kind of got up, and they kind of come stood around the pastor, They told me when he left, they said, Pastor David, if he'd swung, we's going to jump him. We had you back. Y'all, one time I was walking by the cantina, and the guy that he used to own the property, his name's Ricky, he's a Caribbean guy, and he said, Pastor, he said, they telling lies on you. And I said, Ricky, it's okay, man. I've had lies told on me before. He said, Pastor, don't you worry. I got you back. And I said, all right, Ricky, but now, just take it cool. Once you come to church, he did like this. He said, Pastor, look at here. And there was a pistol butt right there in his waistband. He said, Pastor, I got you. He said, I'll go to hell for you, Pastor. I said, no, Ricky, no. And so we're having church, and this guy that threatened to beat me up one night decides he's a preacher. And so he starts a little church under their house. And he's specifically going to our church people and telling them things on us that we were not doing. He's telling them we were doing it. And his wife, when the kids had come, she'd come over here, and she'd physically drag them over to her place. Don't go over there. Well, Wednesday night before I came out, there's a young lady started coming. Her name's Marcia. And she'd been 3 services in a row by Wednesday night. And she said, Pastor, she's Caribbean as well. And she said, Pastor, I tell you what. She said, when I come here, she came to revival here. Ray Perez, you remember Ray Perez? Ray came down to see us. Ray, it's kind of a funny story. His name's Ray Perez, but he speaks no Spanish. I had to interpret for him. But anyway, she said, I came to church because, do you know why I came to church? I said, no. She said, I came because they told a lie on y'all. I said, they did. She said, yeah. And she told who the people are. And she said, they said that Taylor, my son-in-law, stole $25,000 from the house 2 houses down. She said, I knew that's a lie. She said, so I came to see what it was about. She said, and every time I've come, I have felt a presence here that I've never felt anywhere else. Church, I want to tell you, sometimes the enemy, even when you've seen such great blessing, he will tell you lies, and it's easy. It was easy for me to brush them off, whatever. But when that old devil starts whispering in your ear, and bringing, just like he did at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, bringing doubt to your mind. This lady looked at me Wednesday night. She'd been 3 times. She said, I want you to hear me. I want you to listen to me. She looked me eye to eye. She said, this church is going to grow. She said, you hear me? This church is going to grow. And church, I'm going to tell you something. If we'll follow after the leading of God, he will vindicate us. I didn't chase down every rumor. I didn't chase down every untruth. I just continued to live for God. Amen. And I went to that Walmart. How far is that? What, a mile, 2 miles? I don't know. I'm not good with distance, but it's just right down this road, y'all. One time I invited a lady to come. I filled up at a gas station. I invited her and the other worker to come. She said, oh, let me tell you, that church would crumble. It'd fall down if I walked in. I said, I've been to church with a lot of wicked sinners, and it had never fallen. It didn't fall on me, and it hadn't fallen on you. And church, all around us, you don't have to get a passport. You don't have to go to a foreign country. You don't have to learn another language. Oh, somebody come to the piano. All you got to do is say, Lord, I will say what you lead me to say. But Lord, I don't know my girls, they used to, Daddy, I don't know them. I said, we're never going to see them again. But maybe we can plant a seed. And who knows but what that person has got a praying grandma. Who knows but what they had a childhood in the house of God, and they've strayed far away. And we see them at Rural King, or we see them at the grocery store, or we see them filling up our pump, and they're over there yelling at the pump machine because it won't work. And what could we do? Maybe we could walk around there, say, hey, what's going on? Everything okay? And I'm talking about carrying the gospel. You don't have to be a missionary. Y'all got a great opportunity right where you are. Got a beautiful facility and a great pastor who loves people. Any man that will travel a country and tell the gospel to children that will purposefully try to take his shoes off while he's preaching, he loves folks. His family loves people. And you know what? I sense it in this church, and I felt it when the kids were singing and we were worshiping the Lord. I don't want to keep it on the inside. Could we stand tonight? I'm going to do what I did this morning. I'm going to ask you a question. And I want you to physically raise your hand if you can. How many of you know somebody that needs to be saved? I mean, you know somebody and they need to be saved. And maybe it's a desperate situation. It's already gone past, they just need saved. If they don't get saved, it's terminal. I got a sister. I love her. She's been married 5 times. She put a post up about being the woman at the well. She came to Mexico when we lived there, and we prayed that she'd get saved. You know what? She got saved. And she's with this 5th husband. She got saved. And she loves people. But what if I had said, you raised your hand. And if I'd been raising my hand those years ago, she'd have been on my heart. And I don't know who God put on your heart, but I may never, ever meet them. But you have a certain influence over their life that even the pastor does not have. There's things that only you can say that might make a difference. I'm going to ask another question, and this is a commitment question. How many of you will raise your hand and say, I'm going to do my best to try to win that soul for the Lord, try to reach that person? Let's bring them to the altar right now. Let's bring that person. And you ask God how to reach them. What to say, what not to say. When to go, when not to go. And you tell the Lord who that person is. Can we do that, church? Can we come into the altar? Come on. You bring that person that God put on your heart right here to these altars. Amen. Fellas, let's pray over here and let's ask God to help us to win that individual. Sisters, let's pray right here and let's ask God, show me ways. Lord, hey, it might be baking a set of cookies and taking them to the neighbor's house. Gentlemen, it may be helping that elderly man by mowing his yard and telling him how much the Lord loves him. It might be by asking if you take their children to church and bring them to Sunday school, children's church. But God, I want to win them. I want to reach them for you.